10-minute rule motion, Owen Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that leave be given to bring in a bill to require a minister to make an oral statement to Parliament if a contract is awarded under emergency statutory powers to a person in whom or a company in which a minister has a personal, political or financial interest. Madam Deputy Speaker, today I present an important bill which would help safeguard against the risk of procurement corruption and restore some trust in the integrity of our democratic processes at a time when this trust has been rocked to the core. Anyone in public office should be there to serve the public good, not to exploit their position to line the pockets of themselves, their pals, or their party donors. Yet during this crisis, we've seen lucrative contracts go to firms with little experience in public procurement, but with very clear links to people in power. Issues with cronyism are not new, but there's been nothing of this scale before, nothing so blatantly disregarding due process. It could be said that a crony virus is threatening the health of our public services and emergency action is needed to get the government under control. I fully understand there was a need to procure goods at a scale and speed never done before when the pandemic struck, so the usual processes to ensure best value to the public purse did have to be set aside. But to many, it looks suspiciously like the emergency has been used as a catch-all excuse by this government to bypass due process at every turn. The National Audit Office reported a staggering £10 billion worth of contracts have been awarded without competition by the end of July last year, and more than a few of them have raised eyebrows. There are serious questions to be answered about why politically connected and relatively new companies with no track record in procurement were amongst those awarded contracts to supply our NHS. To give just a few examples, the Good Law Project reports that within 2 weeks of inviting tenders in March last year, the government had 24,000 offers from 16,000 suppliers, many of whom had a wealth of experience in providing PPE for healthcare professionals. Yet 3 of the biggest beneficiaries of government contracts awards were a Florida-based jewellery company with no experience of supplying PPE, a tiny vermin control operation called Pest Fix, valued at just $19,000, and an opaque family office owned through a tax haven, Ayanda Capital, whose senior advisor also by chance had a role on the Board of Trade. To make matters worse, 50 million masks purchased from Ayanda failed to meet NHS specifications and were never able to be used. Then, as reported in The Guardian, there's the awarding of a £30 million contract to the Health Secretary's former neighbour, who used to run a local pub in his constituency, after an initial conversation over WhatsApp. Now, he may well be the best person for that role, but without greater scrutiny and clarity, it's no wonder questions are raised about the legitimacy of such deals. Madam Deputy Speaker, in many ways, you could be forgiven for thinking being a donor to the Tory party must carry an inherent specialism on delivering COVID contracts, as Tory donors have really done very well out of this crisis. Millions awarded to firms like Globus Shetland, who donated $400,000 to the Conservatives, or P14 Medical, owned by a Conservative councillor. These issues and details are only public thanks to the efforts of many public-spirited citizens, academics, legal experts and investigative journalists who are working so hard to shine a light on what's going on in the murky corridors, such as Byline Times, Open Democracy, Transparency UK and the Good Law Project. There are so many more examples that deserve far greater time and scrutiny than I could give today as I present this bill. So I do look forward to it passing for a second reading, so there's a chance for further debate and more honourable members having the chance to have their say on the issue. In the full light of day, it may well be a scandal to rival or even surpass the MP expense scandal. But even if it's not, we should at least get the regulations in order to prevent any suggestion of corruption setting in. When processes to protect the public purse and ensure fairness are stripped away, it leaves open the clear risk of unscrupulous individuals exploiting the system for private gain. So it's important that the government does all it can to mitigate against those risks. Instead, sadly, it seems to have revelled in the freedom to bypass due process. The need for greater scrutiny is clear. The anti-corruption organisation Transparency UK has been looking at the publicly available contract data since February last year and has found that at least 68 of them, worth over £3 billion of public money, that deserve further investigation. The Department of Health and Care awarded 57 of these contracts, 47 of which for personal protective equipment, totalling £2.1 billion. They found 17 of those, worth just under £1 billion, relate to companies with political connections. Now, there's no public record to tell us which of these were referred via the high priority VIP lane, which the government set up to allow suppliers with links to politicians and senior officials to pitch directly. The criteria for this is not clear, and its existence wasn't mentioned in the Cabinet Office guidance note. In fact, we only know about VIP lanes as a result of the report from the National Audit Office. We do know, though, that a still mysterious VIP lane was your best bet for getting a contract. 1 in 10 offers were successful compared to just 0.7% through normal channels. It's simply appalling that while underpaid frontline staff struggle, billions of pounds in public contracts seem to be handed out like sweeties to people with friends in high places. People with questionable experience but unquestionable links to power, fast-tracked towards big money deals to supply life-saving equipment. It's been done without competition, behind closed doors, and often producing faulty or substandard goods. Meanwhile, those with a track record in public procurement or an expertise in NHS supplies, but who don't happen to rub shoulders with the right people, have struggled to get a toe in the door. It seems to be much more about who you know and not what you know. There should be absolutely no question mark about the motivation behind COVID-19 contract. It cuts to the heart of how a government operates and what their priorities are. Either it's in the best interests of the public or it's in the interests of lining pockets of their pals. All of us will be paying for these contracts through our taxes for years to come, and tragically some have paid with their lives for PPE mistakes. So the government must help be held to account for these decisions it's taken. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, the great thing about this bill if the right people or companies are getting the jobs, it should put an end to any question marks hanging over the decision-making process, something that surely the government themselves would welcome. Ministers having to answer in Parliament for their reasoning, taking back control. They'll have a chance to convince us that it's a mere coincidence that a contract's been given to an old school chum, the local pub landlord, or a colleague's wife, or a Tory donor, or perhaps even a Vote League campaign colleague. If they're the best person for the job, it should be clear from their credentials, their skills and their record. There is nothing to fear from this bill if there is nothing to hide. Indeed, I imagine the government will want to seize this opportunity to put this simple measure into law. Given the damage being done to public trust, they'll be keen to help set the record straight and show that there's nothing shifty going on. For the moment, these contracts look like public scandals being hidden in an overgrown, privileged public schoolboy arena. Those of us asking inconvenient questions are not going away. Of course, much more needs to be done to improve transparency over public contracts, both during and after the emergency. The UK is well behind the curve internationally in this front, but declaring ministerial interests is one simple, important and effective step we could take now, with no cost, to enshrine greater accountability into law. I very much welcome the cross-party support that this proposal has received from every single party in this place except the governing one. This is a chance for us to restore some badly bruised faith in democracy and bring back the principle of accountability, public service and public good and fairness for all. I urge the House to back this bill.